Hey Exoticals. So I wanted to make another follow-up video about the pretty privilege videos. If you are just now joining my channel and you're just now seeing this video, make sure you watch my other pretty privilege videos on this channel. So I think that another one of the main reasons why a lot of women get jealous of pretty privilege is because a lot of women feel like being pretty is the key to getting love. So we all know that if a man finds you ugly or repulsive or unattractive, he's not going to go out of his way to hit on you or marry you or whatever. So a lot of women who feel like they are ugly, they feel like they will never have a chance at love. And deep down inside, they feel like it is based on how they look. So this is really random, but if you guys watch that show, Love is Blind, you can actually see a lot of people from that show who have this inferiority complex about their looks. And so they feel like they need to go on a show like Love is Blind. And if they do something to where the person just figures out who they are, then suddenly that person will fall in love with them, regardless of how quote unquote ugly they are. So that's just a random side note. But I've noticed that a lot of women and men as well, in the African American community in particular, have this same inferiority complex. And I also have been thinking about how a lot of men and women are touch starved and love starved. So being touch starved is actually a thing. Being touch starved, it occurs when you go without skin to skin contact for long periods of time. And over time, it has been shown to impact your mental health in a negative way. So it's a totally normal thing to desire to be touched. And I'm not necessarily talking about sex, although sex is a form of touch as well. But from the time that we are babies, we have been cuddled, we've been, swaddled and rubbed and stuff like that. And so it's totally normal for human beings to receive positive mental responses when they get touched by other people. But one thing that I began thinking about was how in the African American community, especially if you're in an underprivileged home, a lot of black girls and boys, they don't get a lot of affectionate, positive, soft touch from their parents. A lot of African Americans, the only touch they get is whoopings. It's being backhanded. It's getting hit with a switch. It's getting hit with sticks. It's basically like a violent touch. And so a lot of those people who grow up, these men and women who grow up and become adults, and they've only experienced these negative forms of touch, when they see a pretty privileged woman, like let's take Lori Harvey, for example, when they see her sitting on a surfboard with a man who is considered attractive and he is touching her in an affectionate way, to a lot of people who are touch starved, that's a very big deal. And they feel like, wow, she got that because she is pretty. And so now I'm extra angry because her beauty is causing her to not have to deal with the same traumas as me, because we already know that when it comes to psychology, touch is linked to having a healing effect on babies or just on human beings in general. So, like when you are upset, what do people do? Usually they hug you, they rub your back, they hold your hand, they wipe away your tears. All of those things are a positive form of touch. But for a lot of underprivileged black people, that positive form of touch, that comforting touch, that soothing touch was not something that they had in their homes. And so when they see women who are pretty just getting this type of touch all the time, it also is triggering a whole different trauma. So not only am I quote unquote ugly, not only am I facing colorism, texturism, featureism, and anti-blackness, but now I'm also touch starved. And then I see this other girl who has like slightly different features than me, and she is being touched in a positive way. So this is what causes the intense grief and a lot of the jealousy that we see from both black women and men. This is one of the many causes. And by the way, if you look on Psychology Today and look up some of the signs of unresolved grief, one of the signs of unresolved grief is hypervigilance. So hypervigilance is when a person is super paranoid and threatened by others. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever been around a group of women who were hypervigilant and very threatened by your beauty? Well, yeah, that's because they feel like your beauty is giving you access to things that you're not even considering a big deal, like a hug from a guy. A lot of women who are touch starved, they view this as a huge deal. That's a whole different level of validation that they have not received. And also, I've noticed the same thing with a lot of black men in the red pill space. They are obsessed with who women are sleeping with. They're obsessed with who women are touching, essentially. Who is she sleeping with? She has a high body count, or they're obsessed with who these women are dating, these pretty privileged women or whatever. And that's because, well, in my opinion, most men are incels in general. But when it comes to African American men, it's the same issue. I've noticed a lot of African American men are very touch starved as well. The only touch they've received oftentimes is either being punched, hit, or being beaten or whooped, receiving whoopings when they were growing up. And so a lot of men, they want that touch as well. They want a beautiful woman to caress them and snuggle with them or whatever. So then when they see a pretty woman doing that with some other guy, then a lot of those men get extremely heated and angry. And so this is why we see so much mate guarding. I heard another content creator use that terminology, mate guarding. It's kind of like you don't want others to take your mate. But I believe that in a lot of underprivileged communities, a lot of people view relationships not just as something romantic. A traumatized person views a relationship as something that is literally going to save them, literally going to heal their traumas, literally going to heal their touch starvation, literally going to give them self-esteem, going to give them confidence, going to give them finances, going to give them children. So a lot of people who are underprivileged and also suffering from things like PTSD and lack of social skills, oh yeah, a relationship means everything to them. The male gaze means everything. The female gaze, that means everything. So if women are sleeping with other guys and not him, he feels like trash because his entire validation and his entire self-esteem is based on his relations with a woman. And so a guy who is already touch starved, when he finds out that his fantasy girl is touching other men, this is why a lot of black men, they got upset with like Doja Cat dating a white guy, or they get upset at women who are divestors because deep down inside, those men had a deep desire and a childhood dream of kind of being this stud or being somebody's dream guy or whatever. And I've noticed a lot of women have had this dream as well. By the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting love or a relationship. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be touched or whatever. Those are all normal human desires. But I've noticed that when a lot of these people become adults, a lot of these touch-starved people, when they become adults, and let's say they also happen to be ugly or they think that they are ugly, when they see you getting the things that you want romantically, it just triggers that same unresolved grief on the inside of them, because a lot of these women and men who are jealous of your looks, or maybe they purposely try to drag you down or say you're a 6 or like you're not that light skinned, or they try to make these comments to like bring you down. They are speaking from a place of feeling inferior. They're speaking from a place of dealing with trauma. And a lot of those people who make those comments, they're making those comments because they have so much unresolved grief. So those people themselves, they are grieving the fact that they will never receive love, or at least in their mind, this is what they think. They think that, because they are quote unquote ugly. Stefko talks about this in her videos. Because they think that they are quote unquote ugly or undesirable, they are dealing with that internalized grief of, hey, I will never, ever receive that love that I've been longing for. I will never receive that relationship I've been longing for. I will never receive the supermodel of my dreams because I am a Dusty. You know what I mean? So a lot of people are going through PTSD. They're grieving the loss of their dreams. And you're just sitting over there being pretty and minding your own business. Or maybe you have a relationship, or maybe you kind of have the attention that that person wishes they have. Well, now you are a walking, talking, living, breathing trigger for insecure people. And that is the downside of pretty privilege. And that's why I say that if you are pretty privileged, then you should do everything you can to isolate yourself from people who are going to take out their traumas on you. It's kind of like if you're a homeless person who's hungry and then you walk into a rich person's mansion and then you see their buffet, but you can't have any of the food at the buffet. It's like, yes, of course it's going to trigger anger because you kind of feel like, wow, this other person, they're just living life on easy mode right in front of my eyes. And people say stuff like that because they themselves have hard lives. Their lives are horrible. And I'm not even trying to throw shade, but for a lot of people, their lives really are horrible because they are touch starved. They are validation starved. They truly do feel inferior to you, and so they are taking out their own inferiority complexes on you by tormenting you at work, by cutting your hair, by slashing your face with a knife, and because they're just so angry on the inside. And like I said in previous videos, because in the African American community there is no emotional there's no emotional processing. There are no talking points about things like psychology and sociology. That's not even a part of the African American culture to begin with. And so this is why a lot of the black men and women have all of these problems. They react based on trauma. They react based on violence. They have this hypervigilance, meaning if they see a small threat, they immediately attack. It's kind of like, let's say you get a new pet from a shelter and that pet has been traumatized so much to the point where it just attacks all the other animals. This is how a lot of people in the African American community are. By the way, I'm speaking as someone who I went to an HBCU. I've dealt with the black community. I'm not saying this as a put down or anything. I'm just saying that that's the case. I mean, if you go to other non-black communities, therapy is more normalized. It's talked about more, having like a family counselor or doing marriage counseling. That is actually more normalized in the white community. And I'm not trying to like big up whiteness or put down blackness or anything, because I have videos giving smoke to white people as well. But I would say that is a privilege, is being able to grow up in a community where you have access to knowing about things like psychology, how the brain works. How does your brain work? How do your emotions work? How does society work? It is a privilege to know that information, and that's why I'm sharing this on this channel. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Have you ever been around people who are touch-starved? Because, by the way, a person who is extremely touch-starved also may end up touching others the wrong way. And this is why we see a lot of touch-starved African American men who sexually harass women. They will sexually assault you. They will touch you when you're on the train or when you're walking down the street, when you didn't ask to be touched. And again, this all goes back to simple psychology, simple sociology. This is how the brain works. This is how society works. This is what people do when they are traumatized. Let me know what you think of this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.